Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode, today's live stream, and very excited for this one. This is the fourth stream in the WSL days, and we will be discussing all about WSL and Kubernetes. So at K3s as well. So this will be super interesting because I know we have cloud native fans, we have Kubernetes fans in the chat. I see a lot of people already joining in. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll put you on the screen because you have joined. You should feel happy. So if you are new to the channel, please care to subscribe because that's what keeps us motivated to do more and more stuff. Coming out and doing all the streams. I'm actually putting out all the comments, so I don't know if anybody typed twice, so you'll be coming twice, so it's okay. So yep, we have discussed till now quite a few things actually. So introduction to WSL by Nuno, where he discussed all the introduction, what WSL is, WSL2 is, how to install that, and all the all the distributions and all sorts of stuff. Then we had a great advanced WSL session by Patrick. I think that was really amazing. The complete demo packed with all the features, all the configuration files, how to how these runs, how you can use them. So that was pretty interesting. And then yesterday we had Stuart, where he talked like how to use the WSL capabilities with the containers. So that was interesting as well. So you can use all sorts of features with the containers. Also, he gave a lot of interesting links for you to look and try it out yourself, which is amazing. With that, we again have three giveaways today. One is the CNCF store coupon. Second is the Raft license, 1 year license, and third one is the Penguin Linux license. So we have all these three, out of which Penguin and the Raft are supported by Carlos. So thank you, Carlos, for that. And yeah, I'll put more folks here.
It's great to see Nuno. It's great to see Stuart. It's great to see Carlos. I'm sure Patrick's stream was great. He really knows the ins and outs.
Yeah, so today we'll be discussing all about Kubernetes, how WSL works with that, integrates with that. I mean, you have seen all the tweets already about Hayden, about the awesome person that is on the screen right now with me. So okay, the WSL kind of guru is there. He's an author already. Obviously, I'll give him time to explain, give his intro. But from the tweets, like you can see, like the knowledge that he possesses, and I would say like we are lucky to have him on stream. So you can ask kind of any questions related to WSL2, Kubernetes, containers, and K3s, because he's part of SUSE, and K3s was born kind of at Rancher, which is now at SUSE. So you can see the awesome T-shirt that he's wearing. I don't know when I'll get that. So it is good to have Hayden. Awesome. So with us. So Hayden, so glad you could make it to the stream, and thank you so much for all the knowledge that you'll be sharing with us today. So with that, please introduce yourself with the community. I know already almost everyone knows you, but still it requires like some introduction.
Sure. Let me throw up a few slides together.
Cool. We have fancy slides.
Fancy slides. All right. So this is me. I am the Senior Engineering Manager for Windows at SUSE Rancher. I'm also Manager for Internal DevOps and now Docs. So my portfolio there is expanding. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Windows development. My previous gig was as Engineering Manager for Ubuntu on WSL at Canonical, where I had the pleasure of working with Patrick. I miss him so much, but we are now getting into some new things in the cloud native space. I wrote a book where I took all my knowledge from WSL and dumped it into a manuscript. It's called Pro Windows Subsystem for Linux. It's been published by A-Press. It's out now. Some of you may know me as the organizer of WSL Conf 2020, and then the follow-up WSL Conf 1.5. We're looking at WSL Conf 2.0. We'll figure it out when this whole Delta situation sorts itself out. I'm pretty active on Twitter. That's usually the best place to interact with me. I'm at Unix Terminal. You can also follow me and my weird projects on github.com/Sir Redbeard.
Awesome. So all the links I have pasted, and the Twitter account is already mentioned with the name. You can see that, and it's pretty cool to have such a Twitter handle as well. So that's pretty interesting. And yeah, so Carlos says, and he is the Penguin founder. So
yeah. So I have the Twitter handle because I'm kind of a Unix archaeologist. I'm a big fan of the Nix ecosystem. If you check my GitHub, hopefully you can post a link. I maintain a awesome list called Awesome WSL, which has tons of WSL resources that's actively maintained. I also maintain Awesome Unix, which if you're interested in kind of how we got to where Linux is today, Awesome Unix is a great place to go explore the rest of the Nix ecosystem. So, the Nix terminal is where I live. It's where I love working. And it's just nice now with WSL that I have the advantage of both all my favorite GUI apps and that terminal environment, which is something I think we'll get into.
awesome. So please feel free to ask any questions throughout the stream to make it as interactive as possible, and make sure you have the Twitter threads, because that is the only way you will be entered as part of the giveaway. So all the Twitter threads, they have been awesome. All the people like Patrick, Stuart, Nuno, they have seen the Twitter threads. They have been amazed by the Twitter threads. How much learnings that have come out from the stream is amazing. So please keep continuing them, and for this stream as well. So yep, Hayden, what do we have on the agenda today?
On the agenda today, we're going to talk WSL. I'm assuming most people here are pretty familiar with WSL. There may be some who might have just tuned in for this, who need a quick primer. We'll do that. We'll talk about Kubernetes and try to define what that is, because it is such a big thing. Then we'll talk about K3s, and what a Kubernetes distribution is and what K3s is, where it functions in the Kubernetes ecosystem, why it's a good tool to play with on WSL. And then I'll show you how to get K3s on WSL up and running. We'll do a quick deployment of Rancher itself on K3s on WSL. And then I have something special lined up that I added last night, which will then take all of the manual work that we did in that demo and show you a really nice GUI on how to do it yourself so that you can skip all of that. But it's good to see how it's all put together in the first place, so you can really appreciate the ease of use of that tool, which is the new Rancher desktop. So we can jump right in if you'd like. Are there any questions so far?
Nope. Everybody looks excited, so let's jump on.
Cool. So WSL, for those of you who are new, it is a lightweight virtual machine environment inside of Windows that provides a real Linux kernel and a Linux userland and ecosystem. So originally WSL was a translation layer that translated Linux binaries to NT system calls. That's kind of when I got started with WSL. That was early WSL. And then WSL2 came along with this Hyper-V enabled platform and really unlocked the potential of WSL. It's much faster now. The performance is better. The compatibility is there too, that wasn't there before. So you can do so much more than you could before. WSL2 was a huge advancement. I remember when I first learned about that build 2019, and that I think is when WSL really, took off. What I like about WSL is you have your choice of Linux distro. You can, of course, choose OpenSUSE, Debian, Penguin, Kali, Fedora Remix, and Ubuntu. The irony is that I have had somewhat of a hand in a lot of those. So whether it was involvement in Penguin or Fedora or managing Ubuntu, and now I don't run WSL at SUSE. That's a separate team. I'm on the Windows team in Rancher, and we'll talk more about what that means later. But I do lend a hand occasionally on that team. The key thing that I think distinguishes WSL from other virtual machine environments like VirtualBox or Hyper-V is the OS interoperability. So you have tools like WSL Utilities by Patrick from your other stream. You have that automatic mounting of your Windows drives. You have the new WSLG GUI functionality, and you have support from a number of development environments like Code, Visual Studio, and even JetBrains environments like IDE. So you can really build WSL into your development workflow seamlessly. And I've had the pleasure of seeing examples of this where you take Windows developers who are developing in Visual Studio and C++, and let's say, for example, they're writing games. Let's say, for example, they work at DICE, a gaming studio, and they are building Star Wars Battlefront 2, and they want to create the backend server on Linux, but these are Windows gaming developers. So how do we transition them into building on Linux? Well, they use WSL and WSL integration in Visual Studio, the full Visual Studio, and that really unlocks this cool new world of cross-platform, multi-platform development where you can either build for Windows and Linux at the same time, or you can build your front end on Windows and your back end on Linux at the same time, and then using various tools integrate those workflows. I even have a great example that Danny Llewellyn inspired in my book of doing a Git commit in WSL with a script that then opens an email in Outlook to submit it to a listserv, basically as if you were committing a patch to the Linux kernel bandwidth list. So there's just WSL is what you make of it, and it's this thing that you can transform and really unlock new potential and workflows for yourself. And that's what attracted me and makes me so excited about where it is and where it's going. Any questions come up from that?
No.
Feedback? So now let's talk about Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a huge basket. Kubernetes falls under something called cloud native. Cloud native, Kubernetes isn't all of cloud native. There's other, things in the cloud native ecosystem, but Kubernetes is by far the most popular. So Kubernetes, if you're new to cloud native or what this is a container orchestration platform. What does that mean? It means it manages applications you're running in the cloud in containers with a high degree of redundancy, whether that's multiple containers or containers spread across geographic regions. For example, you have a data center in Dallas and a data center in, Bonn, and you need multiple redundancies for critical applications. So how do you manage all of those containers at the same time? How do you schedule them? How do you ensure that uh, those applications are broken up into smaller functioning units called microservices and they can talk to each other? Um, Kubernetes is a platform that came out of Google. Originally, it was called Borg before it was open sourced and given to the community. And now it has just exploded. So, one of the things we do at Rancher is quite a bit of Kubernetes and Kubernetes development. And let's talk about that. So, many of you will be familiar with Docker and either using Docker as a development environment where you can grab a Docker image and then all of your libraries and dependencies are there. So you can then build your application. You may then be deploying your application in a container. And those containers can be orchestrated with Kubernetes. And there's other alternatives too. There's things like Tanzu and OpenShift and Docker Swarm. Kubernetes isn't the only one, but it's the most prominent right now. And then within Kubernetes, you have runtimes, which operate those containers. Docker is probably the most prominent still, but Containerd seems to be making great strides. For example, at Rancher, all of our new Kubernetes development is happening on Containerd. So does that matter much to a developer who's building their application in a container and pushing it out? Probably not so much. You probably just want to make sure your applications are deployed and reliable. But it's interesting to talk about what's under the hood. So the background is that I've touched on is that I'm kind of a Unix archaeologist. I've enjoyed studying the development of the Unix ecosystem, into Linux and all the functioning parts of that. And what attracted me to cloud native is that it's basically this whole new world of how all these different technologies work together. And just like we have Linux distributions, we now have distributions of Kubernetes. So you have a core Kubernetes layer, but then you have a choice of all of the different components around it. Everything from database to networking. And it's kind of reminds me of Linux distributions in the early days where you had your choice of your own init system, are you Upstart, are you Systemd, are you OpenRC? You have your own choice of desktop environment, So Kubernetes has distributions too. Rancher has two prominent ones. K3s, which we'll talk about more in detail. And then based on K3s, there is a hardened version of K3s called RKE2. Now, all of the cloud companies like Google, Amazon, Azure have their own Kubernetes distributions. And then you have competitors like OpenShift now has Kubernetes support. VMware has Tanzu. You have Kubernetes platforms as a service like Platform 9. So there's a lot of options. Within K3s, you have your container runtime, which is Containerd. You have your database, SQLite. Your core networking is handled by Flannel. Your internal DNS is Core DNS. You have traffic to manage ingress. And you execute your containers with runc. So there's a lot to learn. There are lots of pieces to unpack, and it's almost just as complicated as learning to understand a Linux distribution. But what it comes down to, even if you don't get into the minutia of what creates a distribution, the takeaway for developers and system administrators is that you have a way to now package your applications that used to be these monolithic things you ran in slow, clunky VMs, and then break them down into smaller units called microservices, link them together, and then spread them out geographically, either on-prem or in the cloud or hybrid. You have your choice of distributions and how to do that, interfaces and how to work with those, and ultimately it creates a more resilient ecosystem, resilient platform for you to manage and deploy those applications. So if you're doing development in the cloud, if you're developing cloud-based applications, you need to be focused on Kubernetes and where it's going and ensuring that you're, containerizing your applications. Um, if you are building development tools, you need to make those available, in containers, because that's where developers are working. Things like Visual Studio Code now has this great dev container workflow that I think Stuart might have touched on. And this seems to be where the future is. So just like I kind of resisted it for a while, like VMs are fine. Why would I need all this Kubernetes stuff? You know, my own blog, I think, just still runs, in a VM. I haven't switched to Kubernetes yet, just because it's been where it is for so many years. But if I were setting it up today, it would be on a Kubernetes stack, so that when it crashes, another container spins up and keeps that blog going. So if you're doing development, you need to be aware of cloud native and cloud native uses. If you're building dev tools, you need to make them, containerized and available to use for cloud native development. If you are doing system administration, you're going to increasingly get demand for using Kubernetes and getting familiar with Kubernetes distributions and deployments like K3s, RKE, Rancher, or what you find in the cloud. Any questions coming in?
Oh, people are just enjoying the agenda that you have brought.
All right, let's talk about K3s. So K3s is a very simple, I say simple, it is a simplified Kubernetes distribution for the edge, which is like devices and resource restrained components, ARM devices like Raspberry Pis. It's distributed as a single binary, which is very useful. It's about 40 megabytes. And what I like about it is that it is super useful for development on your local system. It is just easy to get up and running and then have a working Kubernetes distribution to play with, and figure out what kube control commands work, and how pods deploy, and what how you add taints and tolerations, apply manifests and those kind of things. So K3s is actually a cloud native sandbox tool. So it's been contributed to the community. All of this is open source. And as I mentioned before, it actually forms the core of RKE2, which is the enterprise grade deployment implementation of Kubernetes that powers Rancher, which is, it's confusing, but Rancher is the flagship product of SUSE Rancher. It is a platform and an interface for managing all of these components together from a web interface that make an app marketplace that makes it super easy. So if you don't want to spend all day on the terminal, you can. All right, so let's switch to a demo. So let me hide that.
Yep, by now I think Hayden has set the context way right, starting from the WSL primer, what are its features, capabilities, the power, and actually you can make WSL do whatever you want. So and next is the Kubernetes, like the orchestration, what it is. If you want to learn anything about Kubernetes in detail, then I prepared a course free of cost, which is with my CVO team. So it is cvo.com/academy. So make sure you take that free course. And even Rancher Academy has one by my very good friend Adrian. So make sure you take that as well, because I was one of the first one who took that. So it is pretty good. So it's basically an RKE Rancher, how that works and all that stuff. So make sure you go to academy.rancher.com to take that as well. And after that, the K3s, shout out to Darren for starting this amazing project. And it's been amazing since the day it has come out. I've done multiple streams with him on K3s, so make sure you check that out as well if you want to go deep dive. But yeah, K3s is dope project. To be honest, Civo is the first ever cloud to provide a managed K3s offering. So so that's pretty interesting. So make sure you check that out as well. And now we are on WSL with K3s. All set.
Yep. Yep. So I grabbed OpenSUSE Leap 15.3. OpenSUSE Leap is available in the Microsoft Store. The cool thing about OpenSUSE Leap is that it is binary compatible with SUSE Linux Enterprise 15 SP3. So with Leap 15.3, you're getting that point release as opposed to a rolling release. There is Tumbleweed as well. But with Leap 15.3, you are getting basically the equivalent of the enterprise grade SUSE distribution. It's just packaged for the community. So it's really nifty and incredibly stable for building on. I installed that. There was a quick setup process through the unique SUSE application called YAST, which is great for system administration. And then I open things up in Windows Terminal, which is, of course, the best way to experience WSL. All right, and then I'm going to open my cheat sheet. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go grab, pardon the temporary like window in window, and we're going to grab the latest K3s binary. This is directly from the K3s GitHub repo. And I think I'm going to drop in as root. We're going to be doing
Can you increase the font size?
Yeah, let's do that real quick. It's something I should have done in advance. Appearance. Where did that go? There might be someone in the chat who can remind me exactly where. Yeah, in control. There we go. How's that?
Yep, that looks cool.
Better? Okay. So first thing we need to do is a little bit of setup, and that's because Kubernetes right now needs IP tables, and a lot of distributions are still shipping with NF tables, are now shipping with NF tables, which seems to be kind of an interim. The new trend, it looks like we're all going to be moving towards, is eBPF, which will make IP tables, which is the legacy tool, obsolete, hopefully. So we're just going to grab that from the SUSE repo using the SUSE package manager, which is called Zipper, and give that just a second. So I wanted you to see how you actually set this up from scratch. Install these. Those. Cool. We are done. Now we're going to grab that K3s binary. We're just going to wget that. Nice thing about being right around, looks like 46 megabytes now. It's small. So we wget that. Let's move it into user local bin. So that's kind of where it expects to live. So that's the command move K3s, user local bin. And then we're going to make it executable with chmod user executable. All right, so let's see if it works. Our version, K3s-f version, and we are operating. We're running 1.2 to 1.4. That's based on the upstream Kubernetes 1.21. We've got RC1 coming out right now. It's based on Go 1.16. I think we're expecting a new version of K3s here in the next week or two. And eventually we'll get 1.22 out. So let's real quick just do a sanity check on our environment. Make sure everything is configured correctly for our system, and we've passed. So a lot of text flowed by. K3s, check config, just make sure that we have everything in place to run a Kubernetes environment. We get a warning about swap needing to be disabled. Right now, Kubernetes doesn't support swap. That's changing. It can be disabled in the WSL settings in the WSL config file, but for our uses, we will just leave it where it is for now. But we've got all of the system calls and seek that we need for Kubernetes to function. We've got a warning about that. It's just a warning. It's not a fail. We've got our network drivers in place and storage. So we are good to go to launch our Kubernetes environment. So what I want to do actually is open two panes side by side, because that is going to generate a lot of noise that we could pipe to the background, but I like to see go by just because I like seeing verbose output. So we're going to start that K3s server sudo, because we are already root. It's, of course, it wouldn't be a demo without interesting challenge here. So that's fun. Always love a good breakdown in your demo when you try it the night before and it worked just fine. Server contest store HTTPS listen TCP bind already in use. I think I know the issue. Okay. So here, yep. So what's happening is what I plan to show you later is called Rancher Desktop. And it is running in the background, and it already has K3s running in the background. And the system is saying, whoa, 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 your port is already bound. So let's terminate that in the background. And we'll do that with WXL AC terminate Rancher Desktop. All right, there we go. Let's try this again. Always fun to do live debugging. And we're off. So, hey, you got to see me, no one's perfect. Things happen. And we got to live debug that solution. So that's always the fun challenge with these computers. All right, so we're going to wait for that to come up. It's going to take a few minutes. In the meantime, let's go check on see how our cluster is doing. And it looks like we're up and running already. That wasn't too bad. So we've got our control plane, we've got our core DNS, and we've got metrics running to monitor the output of or the demand that our workloads are putting on the Kubernetes system. So real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set some environmental variables so that the tools I use can locate Kubernetes connection. So that's setting Kubernetes master and Kubernetes config. That's just so the tools that we're about to use know where to, for example, find the control plane and then find the YAML that controls Kubernetes. Because the great thing about Kubernetes is it's all YAML, and I like YAML. I prefer YAML much more to JSON. So with that set, we now have a single node Kubernetes distribution running on WSL. Let's shrink that a little bit. And we have Kubernetes in WSL running, ready to do things for us. So now, what do we do? So just like you would have and install Linux, and then you would have Linux, what do you do with it then, right? So you then need to install packages. And one way to install packages or workloads on Kubernetes, you can manually download containers and do it that way, or you can use things called Helm charts. And you can use Helm itself, but Helm has some drawbacks. And Rancher has a new tool called Hipper, which is kind of a play on words from Zipper, which is the SUSE package manager. And it does a lot of the same things as Helm, but provides kind of a more richer package management experience. So we're going to install that, and you can learn more about that on the Hipper website, which go. You can check that out. You can drop that into the chat.
Already did.
Thank you. And we're going to install that, and we are going to curl pipe bash that because we are living on the edge today, and we are installed. Okay, and we're going to check that it is working. Anyway, thank you for the warning. And then, yep, we're good to go. So what are we going to do now that we have basically our package manager for Kubernetes? Just like you would on Linux, we need to add repositories. There's two key repositories we need to add. The first one is the Rancher repository. So we're going to add that. That's the Hipper repo, add the branches Rancher latest, and then the location of that repo. So if you've ever edited your app sources or your zipper config or your RPM sources on CentOS, you'll probably be familiar with having a branch and a link to where you would download something. The other thing we're going to add is the repository for JetStack, because what we need requires a dependency called cert manager, and that's provided by JetStack. All right. Then we're going to list our repos. All right, we've got both repos configured in Hipper. And then we're going to run update. This is just like sudo apt update. We're going to grab the latest charts from those repos so that when we install the latest versions. Okay. Now, what I want to show you is installing an application on Kubernetes. So most of the applications you install in Kubernetes, we got Teams excitedly going up there. That's taken care of. Most applications you install on Kubernetes are going to be server-based. It's going to be things like Apache or Jenkins or the application you develop in-house. But sometimes you're going to have user-facing applications that are web-based. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to install Rancher. Rancher is, like I mentioned before, that flagship product of Rancher Labs that kind of brings all of the tools that we build together. K3s goes into RKE2. We've got Fleet, which is our GitOps operation. Eventually, we're going to build in Harvester, which is our HCI tooling, which will allow you to basically run those legacy VMs within Kubernetes. So if you have those VMs running that you want to build into your ecosystem alongside containers, they work side by side. But let's get that started. So a few things we need to do is create namespaces for our K3s Rancher. We need one called cattle system. And we need one for cert manager. And then we're going to configure cert manager. We're not going to go through the process of issuing certs. It's outside the scope of the demo. But normally you would generate, certs. You could use something like if you wanted to pay for your own, certs, you could, or you could use something like Let's Encrypt. And that's in order to have the HTTPS connection between in your browser to ensure security. So now we're going to install Cert Manager into our cluster. Install that chart. You're going to see some activity on the left as it grabs things, spins things up. Again, I like seeing all that. You could pipe that behind the scenes. You could use Screen to put that in the background. You could pipe it to a file and then use tail to check it occasionally. Let's give that a few minutes to spin up. We are done. So Cert Manager's installed. And let's check status of those pods in the namespace. Right, we've got our Cert Manager webhook, Cert Manager, and those are ready and running. So Cert Manager is good to go. Next, we need to install Rancher itself. Let's do that. So again, we're going to use Hipper install. We're going to install the Rancher from the latest branch in our namespace cattle system, and we're going to set the host name to rancher.local because we're deploying on our local system. There we go. That was it. Let's go. Let's see. Let's check status of that before we move forward. So it's still creating. We'll give it a few moments. It shouldn't take too long. But you see, if you've used Kubernetes before, you're probably familiar with kube control, or some people call it kubectl. I like kubectl, but people sometimes think that's too cute. I like it. but you've got kubectl, and we're just calling it from K3s. If you use a lot of K3s, you can, of course, use a Linux alias so that you don't have to type K3s and then kubectl every time. That few more seconds to set up. In the meantime, let's do some network configuration, because we've got some unique aspects here because we're running this WSL environment within Windows, and WSL2 has its own network within the Windows networking system. So you basically have your own NATed subnet, and if you want to be able to connect, it sometimes requires tweaking. Okay, so our Rancher nodes are up. Let's go config our networking. So we're going to do that first within WSL by pointing rancher.local, which is the host name we gave our Rancher deployment, to our local host. And we're going to just use echo, and we're going to pipe that and append that to our Linux hosts files. So that's the start of that. And now we need to do kind of something similar on the back end, which is to connect our Windows. We need to tell Windows to connect rancher.local to the IP address of our WSL environment. So I'm going to use PowerShell to open Notepad to open our Windows host file. All right, let's switch over to PowerShell and do it. Right. Okay, so we have one here from a previous demo I did, but I need our latest IP address, which is here. We go. This is our Ethernet. This is the virtual Ethernet adapter for our WSL environment. We're going to paste that in here. Save. So what we've done is we've spun up that Rancher container within Kubernetes and on our cluster, and then configured it to connect to rancher.local. We have then told our WSL environment that, hey, you're rancher.local. And then we've configured Windows networking in hosts to say, hey, rancher.local is at the IP address of our WSL environment. And now let's go make sure this works. And I am not very embarrassed. We're going to get a certificate warning because we didn't go through the steps to get a custom certificate. We just spun up Cert Manager. But here we are. So this is Rancher. This is the UI that we use to bring all of the Rancher tools together. We're just going to use a random password. We are going to we're going to use the IP address that we assigned WSL environment to. Going to complain and give us a warning. That's okay. All right. So we now have Rancher, and we can see our cluster, and we can see everything that we have running, including the pods we have scheduled. We can configure Kubernetes further. We can skip the terminal if we want and go straight to a web-based terminal. We can even use the new Cluster Explorer. This is the new interface coming for Rancher and Rancher 2.6 that helps you manage your deployments. So this is now a application that we've deployed on K3s, running in our cluster, and we can use it to manage this cluster, or then join other clusters on other nodes, remotely or locally, and manage them. And if you're interested in just, tinkering with K3s, getting that started, and then going further, and then using the Rancher dashboard, which is this, on having a nice GUI to manage that all. This is a great way to introduce yourself to Rancher. Now, we did a lot of manual stuff there, and it was complicated, and it requires a lot of Linux knowledge, things like host files and networking and Helm charts, and you might not be there yet, and that's fine. There's a lot to learn. So let's say you want to get started without all of that necessarily. We have something new from Rancher to close everything out. So I've just terminated my OpenSUSE Leap environment so that we don't have that same issue we had before. I am going to go to my downloads and desktop. Show you something new that I built from source last night. Keep adding, where are we adding? This is a very cool tool coming from Rancher. It's for Windows and Mac, and they're accepting input on whether users would like it for the Linux desktop as well. It is basically Rancher's response to Docker desktop. And what's nifty about it is that it's completely open source. It gives you choices about which Kubernetes versions you want to run. And it is still alpha. It's 0.4. It's got some rough edges. But what's cool about it is it's powered by WSL. So it uses its own WSL distro behind the scenes to do everything we just did manually. But you don't have to do manually here. And it is, for example, you can choose your own version of Kubernetes, which can be useful for testing if you're a developer, to make sure you're on the latest version, or you might have to support a previous version. Something you'll see here is it also has WSL integration. So you can check a box, and now the Kubernetes distribution that you've installed in Rancher Desktop will be available in any of the WSL distributions you have available. So if you want to use kubectl or those other commands in those environments, it's automatically linked in. It just happens automatically. So port forwarding is managed for you as well. And then we'll give Image Manager a minute to come up, but you have a really cool GUI here to download the most popular images you would use, things like all of the Kubernetes tools like metrics or monitoring or logging that you might want to add to your cluster to manage it. But then you also get an interface to download images directly. So here you have Core DNS, metric server, but you can pull images directly from, for example, Docker Hub or any of the other container registries and deploy them directly. So you can actually just skip Hipper if that's not something you're interested in doing and deploy them directly. Another feature that's coming very shortly to Rancher Desktop is built-in image security scanning. So you'll be able to push a button in Rancher Desktop and verify that your images that you're deploying and testing with don't have any major CVEs. So, you can pull an image. You can pull anything you want to try from Docker Hub or any of the other container registries out there. So Rancher Desktop is a Rancher sandbox tool. They're accepting lots of feedback right now. There's a website here, but the action is on GitHub. You can see there was a release, I think, just a couple days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago. And feedback is welcome on this. So you'll even see that I've got feedback. I said, hey, we need to clean up the menu bar on Windows UI. And I've got a few other feedback things that have been closed and fixed. So today we've installed OpenSUSE Leap on WSL. We manually installed K3s by downloading the binary, moving it into place. We debugged an issue where we already had another K3s instance running in the background that we had to kill. And then we spun up our K3s server. We used Hipper to apply charts, which then allowed us to deploy pods containing Cert Manager and the Rancher dashboard, which is a useful interface for managing all of your Rancher clusters. If you deploy, you can also deploy Rancher Desktop in a Docker container itself. And now you also have the option if you want to skip all of this manual work, but still take advantage of the power of WSL and use Kubernetes to run images. You have Rancher Desktop. So, yeah, questions? Because I know that was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of kind of cool stuff, and we have like a couple of questions, but they are kind of answered already in the chat somehow. But if I miss anything, yes, Carlos was asking like it's electron based. Yes, it is, and it's powered by Kim. So basically, I have pasted a link in the chat, which is the playlist that I did, actually the Rancher SUSE Super live stream. So where we have discussed all the awesome projects that Hayden talked about, the Harvester, your Epinio, Omni, Rancher Desktop, Kim. So all these projects have been discussed there. So please do check them out, and they are all by the maintainers. So you get to have all the knowledge for that as well, and you have seen that in live action as well right now on Windows WSL, which is awesome. Also, I think the recent release had on Mac, it will use Lima. I don't know how to correctly pronounce that. So of the Rancher desktop, so it will use Lima, I think, in the backend, which was the project by Akiro, who is maintaining that, I believe. And it's also pretty interesting. So yeah, Rancher desktop makes it very easy, and we have okay. So I didn't get the alert. So welcome Danny to the stream. Cool. So that was pretty interesting and amazing session, Hayden. I think you set the context really nicely, starting from the scratch and going to going to the K3 Kubernetes, K3s, RK2, Rancher desktop, the Rancher itself, installing it properly on WSL, setting the network configurations, doing it manually, or using the Rancher desktop and letting it do and do the heavy lifting for that. So I think that will be very interesting. Yes, rightly said by Nuno. Lima is the WSL for Mac, so which is a very interesting project as well. You should check that out. Cool. So that was really interesting and great session, Hayden. I think everybody enjoyed that. So you should give a big round of applause in the chat section for him, because I mean, I really like the flow, to be honest. I don't know about you all, but I really like the flow, starting from scratch and going towards the complex things and showcasing everything. So that was pretty cool and neatly done. Yeah, you also saw some troubleshooting where the 6443 port was occupied by Rancher desktop, and you had to kill that so that obviously you have one port to use on one machine, so you can use that. And but you saw that live debugging and it was helpful. So uh, pretty interesting and awesome tweets by the community, to be very honest. There were tons of tweets that you people have been doing, really amazing. So let me give the list of the winners as well. So thank you all for the tweets. The CNCF voucher goes to Arman. The Penguin Linux licenses goes to Viraj and Vedant, and the Raft one goes to Andrilla Das. So congratulations. Please DM me on Twitter, and I'll give you all the coupons that are required to avail these swags. So
Yeah,
one
great.
question is there, interesting. How do you like Windows 11? I'm running it at home. Love the changes so far.
I love Windows 11. Um, I am actually on my, this is my primary work machine, and I'm usually at Insider release preview, and when it gets closer to release, I might go to Insider beta because I cannot have this system go down. Like, it's just not an option. That being said, I had to switch out a motherboard and had to do a wipe and reinstall. And I said, well, let's give Windows 11 a try. And I fully expected to have to pull it off, and revert to Windows 10 due to bugs and crashes. And I've now been on this install of Windows 11 now for a month or two. So I find it exceptionally stable. I'm very pleased with it. The performance, WSL integration is all there. And yeah, no, I like it a lot. It's very smooth. So all of the bugs that I've experienced, like in those first couple builds, have been addressed. So yeah, I couldn't be more pleased.
Cool. So like Hayden is scrolling on the screen. You can see the awesome tweets that it's all by you people that you have done. So amazing, and thank you for that. And I'll also share one last thing, which we always do at the end, which is this. So we'll put a checkbox. The fourth one. So today's stream is completed, and we are left with the penguin. Obviously, it's going to be super cool because Carlos has been with us since the first stream, and he has been super helpful in the chat as well. He has been super helpful in planning with me, and in giving the swags of the WSL related swags, which is the penguin license and the raft license. So thank you so much, Carlos. And tomorrow you'll be seeing Carlos in action, telling you about all about Penguin Linux. So that would be amazing, and I'm really looking forward to that. So WSL Week, how you're liking that? Please give a shout out on your Twitter handle, social media. Tag all the awesome people that you have seen: Patrick, Nuno, and Stuart, and obviously Hayden. And tomorrow you have to tag Carlos all the time. So
Awesome.
that
Yeah, no,
is good.
Carlos will be great. If you missed any of the previous sessions, please go back and watch them. Everyone you've had this week, are fantastic people within the WSL community. I really appreciate you having me today and putting this together. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yep, it's been amazing week, to be honest. We have learned so much about WSL, and people who really wanted to know always about WSL but couldn't get that knowledge enough, starting points enough. So everybody has set the context really right with respect to the titles of the stream. So like introduction to WSL was the actual introduction needed for WSL. So when it comes to advanced WSL, then Patrick did the advanced things. And when it was the WSL containers, so Stuart showed us like how to use all the power of WSL in containers. And when it came to Kubernetes and K3s, you have shown how it actually works, how you actually install K3s and WSL, and how you can use the same power with the other tools like Rancher Desktop. So I think that's pretty amazing set of the streamline. And again, thank you to you, Nuno, Patrick, Stuart, for agreeing to do the streams and arranging and getting all the topics sorted out, what would be the best for the community for the whole week. So that is pretty amazing. And yep, so make sure you kind of reach out to Hayden for any of your queries regarding Rancher. Obviously, he's working over there, and you'll be seeing his, beside his name, it's written 2.6, which is for the new release that is coming for Rancher 2.6, which will be super cool because the Cluster Explorer is now going GA, and it's not a kind of different feature that you have to go to. So it will be the default UI that you will be seeing with Cluster Explorer. And any of the streams that you have. So there's a SUSE playlist that gives you all the information about the open source projects that SUSE has been working on. There's WSL playlist, which contains all the 5 streams that you are seeing on the screen. So make sure you check that out, subscribe to the channel, share it so that more and more people can learn from it. So with that, anything else you want to add, Hayden?
Yep. Check out my book. And 2,
Oh, absolutely.
Rancher Desktop 2.6. We are introducing Windows container support on RKE2, which is Containerd based, not Docker based. It'll be in tech preview for a few months, but kind of like how, and this goes back to me being that interoperability geek, right? So just like how, we run Linux on Windows with WSL, with Windows containers on Rancher, we use Linux to run Windows containers. So a tech preview of that running on the latest RKE2 and using the Containerd runtime is coming in 2.6. So I have a team that's been working on that, Jamie, Ross, Luther, and they've been really fantastic, and we've been rolling that out and testing that. So that'll be something to look for. If you enjoyed Stuart's session, you should get Stuart's book too. By the way, our books make great complements to each other. If you're learning WSL, if you're interested in Windows containers, not just Linux containers, but Windows containers, trying that out on Rancher 2.6 when that lands might be something you want to do. So that's all I have.
Awesome. So I pasted the link in the chat for the book. Do check that out. I'll put that in the description of the video as well. And rightly said by Hayden, and the same was said by Stuart as well. Their book complement each other, so they are very good as a combo. So make sure you read that because it will be amazing. Give you more knowledge to whatever you have just seen now. With that. Everyone, I'll leave you to the rest of your days, and thank you so much, Hayden, for joining. See you tomorrow with Carlos. You have to be there because Carlos has been with us since the first stream. So make some noise on social media so that maximum people join tomorrow's stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Hayden, again, and see you all tomorrow. Bye.